Hey everyone, welcome to my Game a Month Indie Devlog. I've wanted to do Game a Month for a long time. For those who don't know what it is, it's essentially where you make a game every month. It doesn't have to be a massive game, it can be as small or as big as you like, and you can spend as much time on the game as you like. So for these games, they're quite small, especially this month. I'm actually away for 2 weeks. So what you see here is me trying to get something together in a day. And when I get back, I'm going to expand on it. So yeah, let's have a look at the game that I'm working on this month. I wanted to show you the character mechanics first. Of course, we have movement. It's at a pretty high speed and there's a little head bob, which is quite nice to add in. And after the basic movement, which is WASD, we have the dash, which is Q and E. So you can dash side to side, and this is extremely useful when dodging projectiles. And I've also added in a little tilt on the camera. The final part of the character moveset is the attack. Now you'll notice when you attack, you're actually dashing forward, and this is with left mouse button. A big part of this game in my mind is that when you attack, you're sacrificing your ability to defend yourself, which is dodging attacks left and right. So you have to figure out when you want to attack, if it's worth the risk, or if you should continue dodging attacks and wait for your opportunity. So there's a mix of patience and impatience and risk and reward. Now I want to walk through the combat section. So as you can see here, we have these simple enemies and their eyes blink when they attack. They go from that emissive red state to a black state, and then they fire the projectiles at the player. And the player is using all the moves that I went through earlier to dodge and attack the enemies. And the main thing here is that you have to really figure out and time when you're going to commit to attack and when you're going to move around and try and dodge projectiles. So it's a very small arena, and the enemies just keep on spawning after you beat them in a few random locations. The enemies just move around, and of course they shoot at you. And this kind of loop here, this combat loop, was to playtest if it's fun and enjoyable to fight enemies. And what I plan on doing now that I've made this, and it's actually really fun to play, I want to build the game a month around this game loop. So this is the core of the game. This is what you're doing in the second to second gameplay. You're fighting enemies and running around. And once I get back, I will be figuring out what the rest of the game is about and building around this core that I've made here. So if you have any cool ideas, let me know your ideas. And if any of you are on my highest tier for Patreon, the files for this project are available to you. So you'll be able to download the files and check out the project, see how I do multiple things within the project. And for anyone on YouTube, I've actually put up a small prototype of the game, so you can actually playtest it and run around, see how the dashing works and the attacking, and feel free to drop some feedback on the video or the itch. And just keep in mind, this was made very quickly in a couple of hours of the day. So yeah, I'm pretty happy with the polish that I got into it, the game feel, because a big part of this experience is actually how it feels to play, how when you dodge left and right, the camera sways, and when you attack, the FOV changes, and you dash into the opponents, and there's that screen shake. And it feels really good to play. That's one of the main things I was going after. So now that I have that strong base, I'm excited to build something around it. I have no idea what that thing around it is. I did a poll on Patreon and YouTube, and a lot of people wanted me to make a roguelike. I'm not sure, a rogue light, I should say. Not sure if I have the time to build that, but maybe I do. Maybe I can build a really small procedural level system, and at the end of each level, you get a small upgrade, and then you can fight more enemies. Not sure where I'll take it, but yeah, let me know what you think. Go check out the build if you want to play it on the itch link in the description. And as I mentioned, if you're a Patreon, check out the build, the project files, and you can see how I made it. So what I want to show you is how the dashing left and right works with the E and Q. And I've got the code here on the side, the blueprints, the visual scripting, working at the same time so we can see what happens. So when I press E, you'll see that the line lights up and Q. So first of all, we have something very simple, which is I've set up a variable called can-dash, and if I can-dash, and I'm also moving on the ground, which is inbuilt, if you're using Unity and you're making your own character, you'll most likely have to do a raycast to the ground. But for anyone using Unreal, you'll just check, is the character movement on the ground? And can I dash? And we then use the and to check two conditions at the same time. And we go into this branch over here. Once we've checked that this is working, we tell it no longer dash. And that's so I can't, if you see here, it's so I can't spam it. Notice when I try to spam it, the line only lights up part of the time to go through. And that's what the can dash is doing. The can dash is reset at the very end over here. So once we've done all this, we can then dash again. After we set can dash to false to stop the player from just spamming dash, we go into the ground friction. And I set this to 0, so if I was to put jumping in the game, the velocity in the air when I dash left and right is the same as on the ground. By default, characters have a friction of 8 in Unreal. And if I was to make that say 0, my character would be running much faster now. So if you can imagine, if I was to set the impulse, if you see here, if I was to set the impulse of my dash to 4,000, because my character on the ground, when it's set to 1,600, it doesn't move very far. If I set it to 4,000, then I jumped in the air and dashed, I would go flying. So what I like to do is set the ground friction to 0, so the air dashing and the ground dashing is the same. And this can even help on instances like when you dash off this this ledge here. If you were to dash off it, it will keep the air dash velocity and the ground dash velocity the same, which I find to be quite useful. This is the add impulse, and I just get the right vector and times it by 1,600. That's just the amount. You could of course promote this to a variable and manipulate that over here and maybe tick the I for the designer so it's public. If you're doing the left side, you'll want to set it to minus 1,600. It just inverts the vector. That's what the negative's for, because if you remember when we do Q, it's left and E is right. So we need to invert the vector. Next up, we have something called lerp roll, and this is a custom event. So this one's quite simple. If we create a timeline, and the timeline length is the amount of time I want the character to turn, how long I want the lerp to go for when they turn. So currently, it goes for 0.2 seconds, which I feel like is a quite nice amount of time. I set the first value to 0, of course, and then 0.2 and 1 over here. So this goes for 0.2 seconds. And then we add controller roll input, which is a custom function in Unreal. And if you were to use another game engine or do this yourself, you could simply just grab the camera and rotate its roll value, which depending on your engine, your rotation value might be different. It's X in Unreal. So all this is doing, it's basically adding whatever number I put into here over 0.2 seconds. In this case, the number I put in is 0.25. So it's going to add 0.25 to the camera's rotation, so it rotates, and it's happening over 0.2 seconds. Hopefully that makes sense. And then after a short delay of 0.4 seconds, we just do the same function, but I make it negative 0.25. So it rolls back the same amount it rolled initially. So 0.25 to roll to the right. And then after a short delay, it rolls back 0.25. And you just invert this logic down here for the Q. So it's negative 0.25 initially to go left, and then it's 0.25 to go back to the center. After you've done that, we set the ground friction back to 8 so you can run around normally. And after a very small delay, whatever you want, you can dash again. So think of this as the cooldown timer between dashes. If you wanted, say, the player to have dash as a special ability, you might make dash a 1-2 second thing, a 3 second thing, so they can't use it as frequently as I want to use it. For this game, the way I'm judging how I'm going to change this value is based off the gameplay. So I'm going to playtest the game. I'm going to see if it's enough time between dashes, and then I'm going to adjust the duration accordingly. So yeah, that's how the dashing works. It's quite simple for left and right, and I hope that was interesting and useful. And that's it for my first Game a Month video. I hope you all enjoyed it. As I mentioned before, if you're a Patreon on the last tier, you can go and check out all the files, see how I created it, even change it yourself and do something else with it. Anyway, thank you again so much for watching. I will see you all in the next video.